how to find, build, and retain coaches. And so this is going to be each of those is sort of its own avenue that they're going to attack. But without further ado, I'm going to turn it over and they're going to give a little introduction. We've got Kim in the center. We've got Kirsten to our stage right, and then we've got Fritz over on the left there. And so if you guys could just do a little bit of an introduction and then feel free to take it from there.
Sure. So my name's Kim. I started with CrossFit Invictus in 2012, maybe 2011. And I started out as a member, fell in love with CrossFit and Invictus in particular, and I started working the front desk, moved into a coaching position. I have an undergrad in sports psychology or master's in sports psychology, undergrad in kinesiology. So sports was kind of my area, and it was a great opportunity to coach here. Once I started coaching, I got involved in the back end part of things, became a manager, and just as of January this year, became part owner of Invictus. So it's kind of my story. I've seen it from all ends, and I'm really excited about this topic. It's a good one. It's a meaty one.
Kim, before we get to Kirsten, can I say that you are a fine example of how we found a good coach and then helped develop a good coach and then retained a good coach for
Love it.
13 years.
Perfect.
Climbed that ladder right up to the top.
Yes, you were the birth of this title. Hi, my name is Kirsten. I have been coaching with Invictus for nearly 9 years now. Before that, I think I can relate to a lot of affiliate owners and coaches that might be on the call, because I think Invictus sometimes precedes itself with its reputation. Before I started coaching here, I coached at a very small family-owned CrossFit gym in Colorado, 100 to 150 members there, a much smaller, more intimate coaching experience. And then I came here and I've been here ever since. I've been a full-time coach, a manager for a short stint, and I now kind of spearhead our coach development with our online program, Invictus University, both for in-house coach development and external coach development.
Another good example. I'm Fritz. I've been coaching at Invictus for 5 years and helped Kim manage. Kirsten has also managed as well. I also help with the affiliate program on the back end, and sometimes you'll see me in the videos as well, explaining the whiteboard workouts. What else? Nutrition, program design, a host of other things. So a wide experience on this panel here. Excited to share some knowledge.
So we're going to jump right into the first part of our title, which is finding a good coach. So I think this is something that often comes up for many affiliates. I don't know of too many people who have coaches that stay for more than 2, 3, 4 years at a time. And so it seems like as soon as you start to get comfortable with a coach on your staff, they are parting ways for one reason or another, whatever that is. And so finding a good coach is kind of where I would consider my area of expertise, because I've done it now a lot of times. And so I think that we can split it into 2 different type of areas. So we'll go into a little bit about the pros and cons of hiring within your gym. So if you have members that are expressing interest, or you think members would be great coaches, we can go over the pros and cons of that. And then I also have pros and cons to hiring outside of your current community. But we'll attack those in a second, because I feel like regardless of who you are looking to hire, there are some must-haves, which I would consider to be skills that you can't teach. And then there are what I would consider red flags, or reasons that people might look good on paper and they may not be a good fit for your community. So a couple of really important bullet points for finding a good coach. And I would consider the first one to be the utmost important, like pinnacle of everything, is, do they care about your people? This is a skill that you cannot teach. Are they a people person? Do they genuinely want to get to know people? Do they genuinely want to know why people are there? Or are they looking to coach because it gives them a title? or because it might give them a free membership, or whatever the motivation is. For us, hiring someone that cares about the people and the members is going to be key. So one of the important things that I ask in an interview is, why would you make a good coach? Or why do you want to coach? And then specifically listening to their answers and how they answer that is going to be where I can learn so much about people. So oftentimes you'll say, like, you'll hear people say, seeing members succeed makes me so fulfilled, and I love to be a part of someone's journey, and like, it is the best part of my day if I can get something out of coaching a class, or I can connect with a member. All great answers. Surface wise, don't seem bad, except the one common word in there is I. And it's all about their emotions, what they get out of coaching members, versus if someone answers a question by, if one person can improve their day by coming into the gym and I can have a small part of that, then it makes their time at the gym valuable, their members for life. And that's the reason that we should all do it, is like health and wellness, health and fitness is important. And the more people that we can affect while doing that as a job is what makes coaching appealing to me. Those are two, on the surface, similar answers, but one is very client centric and one is very I. And just from the number of interviews that I've done in the past, I would say 90% of people will give you the first version. I love seeing people succeed. I love seeing, I love helping people reach their goals, things like that. And the true gems can be found in those answers that are very client-centric. So that would be my first and probably most important thing to look for. Second thing to look for would be, can they create an environment and an experience for your members? Not just read a whiteboard and then clap along. Really, anyone can do that if we're being honest. But are they creating something that individuals could not get if they were doing workouts on their own, if they paid for our programming on their own? What can a coach bring that's value? And that may or may not be technical knowledge. Hopefully, eventually it will be technical knowledge. But it could just be that they're a likable human, that they connect with people and can make people feel seen and heard in the hour that they're in the gym. So that would be my second criteria for like must have under skills that you can't teach. And the third one, please.
So under that one of like, okay, hey, can somebody create an experience? It's basically, hey, it's like a je ne sais quoi, like you just kind of like, you almost have to like watch them lead a class and know like, hey, can this person turn a class into an experience or an environment? And that can sound like very ethereal, but usually what we kind of look for at it is like, hey, did a member learn something? Did they feel something? Or did they connect with someone, right? Like that's a simple way to actually put some meat and bones behind that of like, okay, like, are you creating an experience or just another class that you could go to any 45 to 60 minute workout, structure around the block and find? And Kim's right? It could be, okay, our members learned something technical, or it could be something deeper. Hey, they learned something about themselves. They experienced that they were capable of something that they didn't think they were capable of. And that's not something that happens by accident. A good coach helps structure or build that opportunity in.
Yeah. The third thing would be, do they have a growth mindset? And for any coach that we hire, part-time, full-time, education is going to be one of the biggest things that we like to push, and not just education within a structured setting. So they're, finding their way to get a CrossFit level 3, or they're taking a strong first kettlebell seminar, something like that, but they're looking for education amongst the other staff members. They want to learn about how they could teach a class differently, how different movements can affect different people depending on what their skeletal structure is. Can they take feedback? A lot of people have an answer for everything. So if you're like, oh, this was really interesting how you did that, I would have done it this way, their immediate response is like, well, this is why I did it this way. Not, oh, that's interesting, tell me more about how you would have done it. So looking for people who are willing to listen and also learn are going to be like a huge factor. One of the questions that I'll ask in an interview situation would be, give me the last 3 places you sought out education for yourself or for a member that you were coaching. And I will tell you, especially since we're a CrossFit gym, the most common answers are, I got my CrossFit level 1, got my CrossFit level 2, got my CrossFit level 3, or working on my CrossFit level 3. Awesome. I can also find 60 other people on the street that have their CrossFit level 1, CrossFit level 2, CrossFit level 3. So what is going to separate them from anybody who has done that sort of certification? Do they listen to podcasts? Do they have some sort of mentor that they talk to about different ways to learn strength and conditioning outside of a CrossFit mindset? What books are they reading? What sort of mobility situations are they into? What other certifications outside of just lifting are they going for? So there's gymnastics, there's Olympic lifting, there's coaching mindset podcasts, anything like that is going to tell me that they've got a wide array of knowledge and they want to keep learning when they get here. The last thing that I think is a must.
You get to that one, Kim, really quick. Thomas had a question, and you talked on. His question was about the growth mindset and how you're able to really see if those soft skills are there via questionnaire or interview. You touched on some of the ways to find the growth mindset in terms of like kind of probing what's their education. What are their go-tos for education? Would you also touch a little bit on how you might, and Thomas, if you want a different follow-up to this, but how you might be able to probe how they are with taking feedback? Because I think of all of that, you might be able to tweak and direct someone in a direction of getting education from new sources that they weren't previously thinking of, recommending a book, a podcast, a seminar. But I find it very challenging to redirect, like you said, if they don't have this skill set, i.e. being able to receive and then implement feedback. That is a really tough one to help someone get. So is there a way that you pinpoint if they have that skill set of being able to receive and then implement feedback? Or is there like a question you ask that lets you know beyond like, can you take feedback? And they're like, oh, totally. And you're like, yeah, but really.
Love feedback.
Yeah.
So yes, as part of our interview process, we have coaches basically guest coach. And so that has been super interesting. Lots of crash and burns. And so there's always a coach on the floor with them that can kind of pick up if things are left out or lost or not going well. But we always have them coach at least 2 classes, hopefully with a space in between. And that first class is, hey, show us what you got. Second class is, all right, on this next one, can you shorten your whiteboard brief? Can you think of a different way to warm people up for this movement? What about bringing the class in together at the end for a brief? Things like that. And that's where on take number 2, you'll see them, even the attempt to implement some of those things, it shows you a little bit, but even more so than that, when you're actually talking to them about legitimate feedback that you're giving them, you'll see facial expressions that are like either
body language.
Yeah, body language is huge. Like this is how I've always done it, kind of thing. And so that's more of what we're looking for rather than what happens in that second class, but giving them the opportunity to showcase that they've actually heard what we've said is another really good way to do that.
Yeah, because I feel like that'd kind of be a waste of space in an interview if you literally were asking the question about feedback. I could see maybe something along the lines of like, what was the last piece of feedback you received, and how were you able to implement it? But even that, they're gonna tell a story, right? You got to see it in real time. And as on part of the seminar staff for CrossFit, I would say any candidate coming in trying to be on the level 1 seminar staff, I swear the biggest thing for all of us that are kind of in charge of them for the weekend is how did they do receiving in like, what are you witnessing as you're giving them feedback? And then how do they do with implementing it? Like you said, was there even an attempt? Because we're not about like making them perfect by the next go around at teaching a seminar that they've never taught in their lives, right? But did they make an attempt, and did they receive the feedback in a, positive way? So
Yeah. Love that. Yeah, we ask a number of interview questions that are like, tell us about a time that a coach has affected you, and how are you going to bring that to the clients? Tell us about a time that you've interacted with another coach and learned something from them. So all of those things can give you little pieces, but I think actually implementing it in some way is probably the most important.
do you have any advice on that same feedback topic for Everton, who's just mentioning as a new head coach coming into a team? How do you approach this topic of implementing a feedback culture if maybe it wasn't there? And even if it was there, it wasn't there with you as head coach. Now you're a new head coach. How do you do that without creating, everyone's guard going up or feeling like you're kind of invading a previously existing situation? You guys, that's a sticky one. So I don't know if you guys have any advice on that. Yeah.
It's a really meaty question.
It is.
I think it is both something we're all very interested in still getting better at, right? Ourselves, of like, how do you create a culture of buy-in, right? And I think the first thing that we would say at our culture is that we're blessed to have a large coaching staff, which means we also have we embrace, and I think we try to cultivate, having a diverse coaching approach. And I think that helps us in that we often celebrate that there's not one way to correctly coach a class, but that it always has to come back to the values of, right, like serving the members and holding the coaching standards that we have all agreed upon, right? That this is what it means to be an Invictus coach. And then celebrating and shouting out how different coaches are going to achieve that in their classes in different ways, in unique ways, right? What I emphasize in my class is not going to be the same thing that Kim or Fritz emphasizes, but yet creating opportunities informally behind the scenes for us to still all learn from each other, so that we can practice saying, okay, that's different than how I would do it, and seeing that there's value in that. Not that I have to mimic it or copy it, but I think that in cultivating that environment, it can help to bring down the barriers of how I do it is the only way, right? Any coach that says, hey, like my way or the highway, I'm like, oh, that's your fixed mindset right there. You got to go. You're not going to last long here.
I also think answering or asking questions is going to be the easiest way to get people to put down their guard. And starting out with things like, ooh, it was interesting that you used this in your warm-up. Tell me about that decision. Where did it come from? And having to have them back up their own class, or however they just ran things, is going to make them think about what they did. Next time, are you going to be asking those same questions? Do I need to think about it more? Because I do think people who have not grown up in that like feedback environment, or that constant feedback environment, are immediately, that's their first thing, is like, who are you and why do you have authority to tell me what I've been doing for the last 10 years? And so asking questions and truly being curious about why they made those decisions, I think will start to open those doors. And the more questions you can ask, the more people have to think about their answers and how they're going to respond.
Great.
Yeah. So you have to set the stage for opening up your coaches that you're coming into, open their mind towards being growth mindset. So you could say, hey, what are we here for? We're here to serve our members well. How can we do that? We can coach the best classes possible. How can you ensure that you're coaching the best class possible? By continuing to improve your coaching skill. Well, that can be somewhat objectified, right? You can make it objective. It's not as subjective. So you can set up a system to make sure that everybody's on the same level, even as the head coach. Maybe everybody's reviewing everyone else's coaches classes one at a time. And we've done that here before. I really enjoy that, where let's say, and we even put it into our coaching hours, where you can take another coach's class, and then we pay that coach for their time to do that, and then write up a review and then present it to the other coach, and then they have a discussion. and have everybody review everybody else's classes. That way there is no hierarchy in the observation and critique. It's all unilateral on the same plane, with the goal of enhancing coaching across everybody on the team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool. Great options. Thank you guys.
Kind of in line with that same growth mindset is trying to figure out how people's listening skills are. And I think this one's a hard thing to find. Everybody wants to tell people what they know. And that is particularly true in a coaching member position or instance. And everybody has some things to share, but finding those coaches who leave space for members to talk and tell you how they're feeling, if they felt what they're supposed to be feeling. Things like that are going to be super important. The coaches that are best at this ask questions and wait until there's answers rather than asking the questions and then trying to answer it themselves. Kirsten had one of my favorite quotes when we were coming up with this outline that just says, coaches often think that they have all the answers, but we find the impactful ones have the right questions and they listen to the answers. So listening, I would say those 4 things are going to be the most desirable things that I can find in a coach. They could have 0 coaching experience and or technical knowledge. We can teach all of that. Finding those 4 things, and that would be, do they care? Are they likable? Do they have a personality presence? Can they create an experience? Do they have a growth mindset? And then do they have good listening skills? Are going to be like top part. Couple of red flags that I often will run into that many people might not think are red flags. And they all kind of revert back to, do they have an ego? Are they lazy? First one would be, are they the best athlete in the room? Oftentimes the best athletes in the room are the worst coaches for a few reasons. One, many of them have many just God-given skills. They're athletic. They know how to, they can connect a bar muscle up the 3rd time they do it. So they haven't had to struggle. They can't identify with those members who are struggling. They can't break things down in a way that would make sense to just an everyday person off the street. But also, oftentimes the best athletes in the room are going to prioritize their training over the needs of the members. And so that has been something that we have struggled with in the past when we've hired some of our elite athletes, is that they might be great on the floor, but then as soon as it comes to their training, that is the only thing that they care about. They have blinders on. And if a client comes to ask a question, that's like, don't interrupt me while I'm working out. I never want my members to think that they can't talk to a coach. So, so that's going to be one of those things. If they don't have a list of resources that they reference often, we talked about that before. They think they know everything already. If they don't ask questions in the interview is a perfect time to ask especially if they're not already part of your culture. What is your culture like? Can you describe Invictus? What do you love about coaching? What makes you want to stay at Invictus versus going to open your own gym or something like that? That's a perfect opportunity to let me know how they would be with members when they first meet members. And oftentimes I say, hey, do you have any questions? And they're like, nope, don't think so. Great. Well, we're done then. And then the other thing that I think is super important is that they might be the best qualified and they might even have a great personality. But if you don't think that they're going to fit the culture that you already have going, they're almost always a no for us. We do have a wide variety of coaches, but we also have that learning mindset and people who are interested in members and making the member experience good. And so if somebody else comes from a different culture, a competitive culture, a culture where we're recording, times and trying to get Susie to beat John and all of that, it's just not going to fit here. And so we would rather not worry about firing that person later on. So those would be the red flags. one other thing, and then I'll switch it off to the next two parts or next two phases of our topic. But oftentimes where to find a coach is the actual question. Do I hire within my gym? Do I hire outside of the gym? Couple pros to hiring within the gym, that culture thing that we just talked about. That person already knows the culture. They're already used to the culture. Hopefully they already fit really well within the culture. So you already know if it's a culture fit if you're hiring within the gym. You also already know that person's work ethic and their teamwork aspect. We have a coach that we just hired that quite honestly, he was hired purely for the fact that we repainted our gym and took everything away from the walls and had an 8-hour put everything back up against the walls. And he was the only person, including myself and the rest of our coaching staff, that stayed for the entire 8 hours to help put things back. And he was there for the whole 8 hours as a member, as a paying member at the gym. He was like, heck yeah, I'll put this stuff away and like clean up and do whatever else you need to do, dust off these kettlebells. And so I know his work ethic. I know his desire to make this place better. And so that was an easy hire, regardless of what his technical knowledge was. And then they're also already familiar with the membership base. So lots of people already know them. That's an easy intro. That can also go with the cons. And so going from member to coach is often, as many of you probably know, not the easiest move for people to make. They already have their friends, they already have their, their culture within the culture. And so getting them to step out of that and see the gym as a whole is sometimes difficult. It's also difficult for members to give the respect to that coach if they know before that they were struggling with, bar muscle ups just like they were, kind of thing. So there is an earned respect that takes a lot longer when you go from member to coach. You also, and we've run into this a few times, have the potential of losing a paying member if they don't make the cut for your coaching requirements. So lots of times they might seem great, they fit all of the must-haves, and then they get into a coaching position and they seem like a completely different person. Then you have to have the hard conversation of, this isn't going to work out. And most of the time that also means they're out the door and joining another gym. So the idea that they're going to leave and take a membership with them is often a rough one. So those are that's what I would say would be the pros and cons. Pros to hiring outside coaches, like posting something on Indeed or on the interwebs or things like that. It is easier for members to have that immediate coach respect. That person stepping from outside into your culture has to lose that respect rather than earn it, like your person from the inside. And those people can often bring in new perspectives, new ideas. While we want people to fit into the culture, we're also always looking to change and evolve. And so having someone from the outside that may not have done things like you've always done them and has a good reason why can help kind of freshen up what you're doing and help that growth mindset. The concept hiring outside coaches, you obviously don't know if it's a good culture fit until they're actually here. And then you've got a whole different issue on your hand if you realize a little bit too late that they are wanting something different than what you thought would work. You're also completely unfamiliar with their work ethic. Everyone in an interview can multitask, loves to work, doesn't care about, being here for 40 hours a week and, not getting paid or whatever it is. They're like, everybody in an interview setting is always going to tell you that they're the hardest worker. But you can't actually tell that until they get here. So the interview definitely won't show the whole picture. And then along with the bringing new perspectives and ideas, they also already have built-in habits and ways of doing things that may or may not work with what you've got going on. So either changing those or figuring out ways that you can integrate that within your own system adds just kind of an extra step that you wouldn't have to with a member to coach situation.
Some really good points. Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna turn it over to Kirsten to talk about building a good coach once they're here, Because like I said, I've basically hired people with zero technical knowledge, but they've got great personalities. So
Yeah. Are there any questions that anybody wants to like throw in, jump in, or dig into any of that before we kind of go on to you hired somebody and now how do you make them, I don't know, mold them into what you're looking for? Okay. Yeah, so like I said, my name's Kirsten, and Fritz, Kim, feel free to jump in or any questions. Making this more interactive and making sure that it's applicable to what the listening audience needs to hear, right? Whether that's you want us to talk about full-time development or part-time coach development, let us know. But for me, I think building a good coach, right? You've hired them. There's like two elements to that. You have your onboarding process. It sets them up for success. It is easier to start with a strong onboarding process than rather to like just shoot from the hip. And then 6 months later, be like I didn't hammer out or set or clearly communicate what I wanted from this coach. It's way harder to undo. So having a strong onboarding process sets your team and the new hire up for success. And then part two really is how do you just continue to aid in your coach's development? And all of this is applicable to new hires that are both novice or expert. And we hire coaches with a range of experience. So I think that we're blessed to be able to kind of like speak towards either end of that spectrum. Coaches that have 1-ish years of experience here, or even none, right? They've started as interns. That's rarer here. And then also hiring people that have extensive coaching experience. And there's different obstacles or pressure points in dealing with both those candidates as new hires. But I think some of the most successful onboards that we have had is when we did not throw a new hire into the deep end, right? Hey, jump right onto the floor. We're in a rush. We need classes filled. Susie went on vacation and I just need this class taught. So they are most successful and the community embraces them the most really when they can start with a 1 to 2 week silent observer or shadow period. And that sounds long. Maybe if they're a full-time hire, it can be a little bit longer. If they're part-time, it can be like a little bit longer or shorter, whatever. You got to work within your own budget and your own timeline. But when we can let people just be a fly on the wall in class without worrying about having an answer, telling somebody how to do something, or stepping on somebody's toes, we find that when we actually put them in to lead the class, the community is way more receptive to who they are because they have now had the opportunity to really hone in on getting to know members as what we call on the human athlete spectrum. So if I put you on the floor right off the bat and, hey, like Coach Kirsten, I've never seen you guys before, but like, oh, let me just jump in and tell you how to correct your deadlift. Or, okay, hey, like I need that squat to be like 3 inches lower. You don't encounter, it doesn't matter how nicely you ask, you don't encounter a welcoming audience of like, hey, don't tell me what to do. But if I spend a week and I get feedback from my co-coaches of like, okay, hey, like Sally's a CEO, she's stressed to the max. If this hour of her day, if 1/3 of it to 2/3 of it is spent socializing, totally cool because she's here for an emotional and psychological outlet as much as she is for physical. Awesome. I'm going to set that new hire up for success so that they can ease into demanding more out of Sally rather than like totally missing the mark on what that member needs, right? That's knowing the member as a human, not just as an athlete. But then we can also get onto the athlete side of, okay, hey, we can all step onto a coaching floor and see movement faults. But we have to take the time to understand, okay, hey, like, why is the fault occurring? Is it an injury history I might not know about? Is it that they don't want to do that movement because it doesn't align with their goals that they're training for? Individualizing the group coaching experience is a part of the Invictus culture. And we try to encourage our athletes here to be thinking athletes, right? To get what they want out of the program, not just follow the whiteboard blindly. And so when we give people new hires this time to silently observe, they can start to absorb some of that information so that they go into a coaching conversation with some context. And that's super important because now members feel like, oh, I'm having a human to human interaction, not being told by a stranger what to do. It doesn't matter if that stranger's right. And your coaches should be technically correct. Anything you guys want to add in on that?
No, I just, the shadowing part not only gives that person the chance to get to know members, it also just allows them to be a face, without the members having to interact if they don't want to. So they get used to seeing that same person in the building, in that coaching spotlight, without having to go and introduce themselves or tell them about their 6 injuries that they've already told all the other coaches about, like things like that. They just get to be a face in the room. And we introduce them every time. So, you know, if Fritz is shadowing my class, I'm gonna say Fritz is here. He's just gonna walk around. He might chat with you a little bit, but he's just observing and trying to figure out, you know, what to do. Also, our coaches who are on there and shadowing are not just like sitting there kind of twiddling their thumbs or just talking to members. We give them a piece of paper to fill out that asks them to evaluate the coach who's coaching. So what was their warm up? Why did they choose those decisions? What questions do you have about, you know, their instruction on this? Or why did you say that to Sally? Or things like that. They've got their own observations that they're trying to get down during that shadowing time.
Yeah, you're guiding their observation. I mean, you can help them to see how you want them to see. I was the first person that you brought through this onboarding process, right?
What? Yeah.
It was an 8-week, and I loved it because I felt like every time I was
look at him now, manager of Invictus people.
I felt like every other week the intensity was increased, and I was ready for it. As opposed to they just threw me in the coaching class. I think it would have been okay, but I would have been in survival mode for a long time, and I would have had a very fixed mindset because I would have been like, this is how I do it, so I have to do it, because if I don't, everything is going to explode.
Yeah.
And then you allow me to keep my mind open so that I could not be a copycat coach and coach how you coach. I could be like, oh, like we talked about earlier, take what you do, like how can I apply it my way to help the members improve? Yeah.
And if you have head coaches, I would
better for the members too, you know, like it's better for the coach, but it's also better for the members. Like they're having a better experience because when Fritz is in survival mode, because he's thrown into, you know, out there too soon, they feel that and they're all going to react differently. Some of them are going to pity him. Some of them are going to be, you know, and others of them are going to feel his stress or tune him out, you know, and it's not a good experience for anyone. Right. So
I also think this is a really great question to like, if you're on this call listening and you're a head coach or you're an affiliate owner, like when was the last time somebody just invited you to actively observe, right? Not just like passively sit in the back and kind of like listen to the music or DJ, but like actively observe what is occurring in a class. And especially if you have a very experienced coach, this can be and they're coming from a different culture, this can be the most integral time because you're not asking them to have an answer. And as coaches, we often feel like I need to have an answer, I need to have a fix, and I need to know it all, right? Because as coaches, we're naturally in that position. That's the dynamic of the relationship, coach to athlete. But a lot of things can come to the surface when you have experienced coaches go through this, where they're like, well, hey, like, didn't you see that error? Or you can see that they are chomping at the bit to go fix that setup position or whatever. And it's going to give you a little bit more context of like, okay, hey, like, what do I need to hone in on more with this coach so they understand our culture? But it's also going to then create more dialogue at the end. It's a gift to be like, hey, like, to give a new coach, you don't have to rush in and fix this, because there's also a journey, right? Every single person in the room is probably moving better than they were yesterday. If you have a good coaching staff, so I know that you see the error, new coach, I see it too. But what you don't see is that 6 weeks ago or 6 months ago, this error was 10x worse. So I don't, and neither does the member, want you to go up and be like, yeah, okay, so these are the 5 things I need you to focus on to make this even better. Right? You haven't seen the progress, right? It's all just a timestamp in the moment. And so this is why I think the shadowing, however long the period can be for you, is very important. Maybe it's 3 days, maybe it's 5, maybe it's 2 weeks. We have a gift of having more coaches to pull from. But yeah, so onboarding process, if you can include the shadowing, and then during their onboarding, make sure that you are identifying the most important coaching skills that they need to execute to hold your team's standard of service. Very closely tied into that is make sure you're identifying the most important elements of your culture. And for us, right, like the elements of your culture that might be expressed in the language that your coaches are using. Do you use RX and Scale? Do you use something else? We run a dual track class system here, so there is a lot of moving parts in our system, and we want to make sure that the intended stimulus of each track is conveyed. Do you understand how to convey this? Part of our culture, right, in a dual track system is that tracks stay together. One track is not seen as novice and one is seen as advanced. But if you come from an RX and a scaled system, you might mistakenly come into Invictus and think, oh, well, like this one looks technically less demanding, so this is obviously the scaled version. Right, so it's very important in our onboarding process that we help people to understand the essence and the intended stimulus of our programs and how each member might align their goals with various tracks. And then, you know, maybe a part of your culture is timeliness is the most important, or cleanliness is the most important. For us, it would be building a culture of customization and individualization within the group setting, and helping our new hires understand that it's okay to build a culture where in a class of 20, 5 to 10 other people are squatting to different depths, squatting with the load in a different position, or customizing or individualizing the movement in a way that aligns with them. Yeah. But that's part of our culture. So we need to make sure in a new hire that they understand that and they understand how to execute it.
Yeah.
Lastly, if you have a new hire, like get your standard operating procedures written out and make sure that they're actually actionable. Don't just communicate it to them, give them a written document of, hey, you're on the floor 10 minutes before, you stay on the floor 10 minutes after. Make sure, right, you focus on X, Y, or Z, like whatever it is, whatever your standard operating procedures or the bare minimum your coaches are, expectations are written out, so that we always have something to reference and we're starting from common ground.
And that's actually a super important one that I think most gyms, including us, have skipped, because a lot of it, especially if you're a gym owner, seems obvious. Like, why wouldn't you show up 10 minutes before class to see, you know, if anybody's needed, or make sure everything's where it should be? Why would you, you know, why would you not do a brief at the end, or make sure that, you know, nobody leaves without like a goodbye or a high five or something like that? All of that might seem obvious to us, but as we have learned from experience, it's not obvious to every person that comes into the building. So we actually have a document that we not only hand out to people, we have coaches sign. So that if any of those points aren't being met, then we can go back and say, hey, you read this, you signed this document, you also have shown up, you know, at 4:01 for our 4 o'clock class for the last 3 days, you know, like that's not how we do things. And then we can kind of talk about that. So
the second part of building, continuing to build a good coach, and I'm going to kind of speed through this so we have time to get to retain. And this goes regardless of whether somebody falls on that novice to expert spectrum, is give them informal education opportunities and give them formal education opportunities. How we do it here is informal opportunities is every coach has 1 hour a week that they can get paid for their own education, continuing education initiatives. That could legitimately be, I spent 15 minutes reading a blog. It could be that I watched a video about the upcoming movements we had in the programming this week. Don't assume that everybody's going to spend their free time doing continuing education, but rather incentivize it. And now we reward the people that are naturally doing it, and people that are less likely to do it have a little bit of an incentive. If you're worried that people are just kind of like not doing the thing, or that they're not using the hour well, make it a part of your practice that if you put an hour of continuing education on your time card, that at the next staff meeting, you're going to share what you learned or take 5 to 10 minutes to discuss the article. And then there's a formal education component. And I think this is way more standard at gyms of like, okay, if somebody wants to take a cert, have, you know, a minimum amount or a maximum amount per year that you will cover 50% of their continuing expenses. Before they go to do that cert, make sure that you feel like it's something that they can actually bring that value back into your community. Like if it's totally unrelated, then that's their own endeavor. We have monthly staff meetings here, and an element of every staff meeting is educational in some regard. So it could be a case study on a client, it could be a certain topic of discussion that we think coach development needs to circle around. And then, like Fritz said, making shadowing, observing, and feedback just a general part of your gym culture for coaches. Probably the biggest thing here is if you are not a huge gym with a large staff and you only got 1 or 2 full-time coaches and majoritively part-time coaches, like they're picking up 4 hours here, 5 hours there. You're like, these folks have other jobs, right? This is their second part-time job. Like, don't discredit, like that part-time coach is so critical. The energy they bring and like the emotional energy that they offload off of your full-time coaches is, you can't do that enough credit. So make it easy for them, remove barriers, bring the educational topic to them. Decide as a staff that, hey, our coaching focus for the next 30 to 90 days is going to be X. We're going to be honing in on how to see faults in the hinge, how to teach proper breathing and bracing, what the regressions or progressions are that we want to see, so that when you see these things come up or you hear a client say, I've got back pain, we're all on the same page, right? If you have identified that as a need in your staff, like, and let everybody choose it together. And then at the next staff meeting, if you're the owner or you're the head coach, you bring 3 articles that you hand out to people and say, I need these read, or you bring the education to them so that you're saving them time, right? You've identified the common need, you're bringing the resources, and now we've all agreed we're going to focus on this. It doesn't have to be something technical. It could be, we're going to spend the next 2 months focusing on our coaching language, or something like that.
One last thing about that is that Kirsten talked about like writing things down. We have done this a large number of times. We now have an 8-week program that we send all of our coaches through. That's called Invictus University, and it is just that. The first 2 weeks are shadowing, the second 2 weeks are, you know, whiteboard briefing and talking about what our programming looks like and things like that. If you are an affiliate owner or a head coach and you're like, that sounds awesome, I don't have time to do that. Cool, get that. You can use Kirsten as a resource. She's the head of our Invictus University program. So don't feel like you have to reinvent the wheel either. There are things out there that can help you onboard coaches, where you don't have to come up with it all on your own. Especially if you're a gym that's doing this, you know, once a year or once every 2 years. Hopefully you're that gym, but you don't have to like try to do this all on your own. There's definitely resources there for you. Fritz.
So we talked about how to find good coaches within and outside your community, and we've talked a lot about how to build them. So the third part is how to retain them. I think that we've already discussed how to retain them, and it's just all the things we already talked about, but aligning that with the coach and making sure that they're voicing their opinions on what they want out of being a coach at your gym. And I think most coaches get into it because they love coaching, not that they want a free membership. At least that's hopefully the ones that you're hiring, because they'll last longer, probably serve your communities better. So I know most of those coaches want more responsibility, or if they're limited on time, they're going to want to improve the quality of their coaching that they do have on the floor. So just giving them opportunities to express whatever they're looking for and asking them consistently with, you know, semi-annual reviews or monthly meetings or just impromptu conversations on the floor, making sure that their goals and needs are in alignment with the gym and vice versa, and then giving them opportunities to fulfill responsibility and improve in their coaching. So first bullet point here is listen, ask questions, how you can help them grow or improve, and what do they want out of coaching. And once you know that, then you can just piece together a plan and help them move towards whatever the goals are. Investing in them, of course, is important. So I just wrote in here, paying them an attractive wage. So making sure that they feel valued monetarily because they are bringing a ton of value. You guys do a lot of presentations here on the business side, and I'm sure each coach probably has a general idea of how much value like per hour that they are worth. So if you're trying to buy back your time, you can pay a coach anything less than what your time is worth, and you're saving yourself some time to go and either get some peace of mind, spend time with your family, or work on programming, to the gym, work on your back end management stuff. And you're also giving your coach an opportunity to spend some time with the members and pay them in a way that they feel valued. Celebrate your coaches, whether that's at staff meetings, whether that's making impromptu shout outs during classes or on social media, monthly email bulletins, things like that. People love to be seen, especially in this society where everything is so readily available on social media. So you can use that to your advantage. Professional development, we talked about this. I think this is a part of building a good coach, but it's also part of retaining a good coach. So identifying where coaches want to focus their skills and where to improve their knowledge, and you can support them. Like Kirsten said, we offer 50% up to a certain amount of money each year on helping coaches with their continuing education, as long as it aligns, and almost always aligns. I don't think there's ever been a time where a coach is like, hey, I want to learn about basketball coaching. I don't know that aligns, but if you could bring something financially back to the gym, it actually might, So let's see. And yes, professional development, yearly and semi-annual reviews are very important because it helps improve the quality of your coaches. And you go all the way back to the beginning with the first coaching experience, where afterwards they get feedback right away and then they have to implement it. That sets the culture of, okay, you have to be open to criticism, and you have to be able to take it and run with it, and you give them an opportunity to give feedback back to you in the gym right away. And you keep that going throughout the entire process that they're a coach with these semi-annual reviews. That way they know that the process of development doesn't stop, it continues, and they're always looking for opportunities to grow and improve. And you work that into your system of management. That way you can make sure that they know that you care about their improvement, because it's going to benefit them. It's going to benefit the members in the gym.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Cool. That's what we got.
I didn't want to cut off if there was no fear. I love it. This is awesome. I'll make sure everyone can get out on time, but if anyone wants to stay, or if there are any questions that didn't get put in the chat, if anyone wants to come off mute, ask more from our Invictus experts, or yeah, anything you guys got, please let us know. This is your chance to be like, yeah, but none of that works. What about this?
Yeah, if there is anybody on the call that is listening and is like, hey, this all sounds great in theory, but I think I'm doing this and I'm still not ending up with good hires. So unmute, hang out, talk with us. I'd like to hear, what are the holes that you think in what we're saying? Because we also have these plans, right? And sometimes they work really well, and then sometimes we realize, oops, we didn't follow through on this as well as we would like to in theory.
And every situation is,
we need to do another session. So you mean another one of these with Invictus, yeah?
Yeah, it would be great.
Topic or kind of an evolution of the topic.
Yeah, all of it is.
Information. I was taking tons of notes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a lot. You guys did really good.
You did too, Fred.
Thanks.
If there are questions in the chat board that we haven't answered, we are happy to
everything. Kapua had chimed in about how earlier on, when you guys were talking about how members play a role in the development of interns, and she said that that's big in their culture as well, and that the members appreciate seeing the progress of the culture. So she kind of highlighted, untagged onto that. Everton was asking if you guys have a mentoring program, which I don't want to exactly sum up as Invictus University, but kind of, yes, or
Yeah.
You want to talk about Invictus University a little bit?
She created it, by the way.
Invictus University was born out of having the pleasure of being in such a diverse coaching environment at Invictus. It has always been amazing to see that we have such experienced and varied coaches on staff that you can learn from, and they have different specialties and different passions. And Invictus University was our intent at trying to distill what are the common practices and fundamental things that the best coaches are consistently doing, regardless of what the noise looks like, right? That, oh, well, hey, my specialty is this, my specialty is that. But like, if you can actually dig beneath those layers, you find that the foundation of a really strong, effective, and impactful coach are the same. And it's silly, right? It can almost seem too simple, but as we would say to an athlete trying to develop, we say to coaches, their development, the tracks are almost the same, that we have to always return to the fundamentals. And part of that is technical and part of that is tactical, right? Like, what's our language? What's our ability to connect with a human? Do we understand different learning principles that need to be implemented? And then also, do we have the technical coaching eye? And so, yes, Invictus University is our attempt at creating an environment for our staff, but also for other gyms that maybe don't have as large of a coaching team, to have a place to come talk to and learn from other very experienced coaches. Because gosh, like, isn't that just the best way to learn? Sitting down and having a conversation with a coach that sees the problem differently than you do, or can share a different approach, rather than having to surf through 50 different YouTube videos and hear the same like 5, nonsensical applicable things of like, this is how to be a good coach. So yeah, it's really just our attempt at distilling what has worked well here.
How to make better group coaches.
Yeah, how to make it is truly oriented towards group coaches, because that is our passion, that group coaches change lives and build better communities. And it always bums me out when I see good group coaches leaving the group coaching environment to go just do one-on-one private training. It's awesome, good, great, but I think we can all appreciate that if we can make really great group coaches stay in group coaching, we can 10x, 100x our impact on community and society across the biopsychosocial field, right? Not just, oh, but I deadlifted more. And that's I think our attempt.
Yeah,
that's my family's model. The person that wins at the end of it all is the one that's reached the most people. And if you're coaching a group class, you're reaching more people than in one-on-one. No disrespect to one-on-one coaching. I do a lot of that too myself. I put the link for Invictus University in the chat. I will send it out in email. And then Ferdinand, you had a question too. Your hand was up.
Yeah.
I think we both might have a question, but yes, let's have another session. This was totally great. It's so much of what we're attacking in our gym. And probably my biggest question for you guys is any advice or help or input you could have for the difference between our gyms. Like, you guys are in a more urban area. You definitely, right? Invictus is very well known. Coaches want to come and be with you, I would imagine. We're really rural. We're one gym rurally in Northern with nobody around us. So we don't have other gyms and coaching options playing off of us. And we just need more coaches. And so,
that's I actually hear that from a lot of gym owners that I talk to, and I think that that's where looking within your membership base becomes pretty important. Again, knowing the pros and cons. You can always put something out there. I'd also challenge most people, if they haven't put something on the interwebs, Indeed, or whatever other hiring sites there are out there. Like, we do get a ton of people that reach out to us, but they're mainly looking up coaching jobs. So if you have a coaching job, it doesn't hurt to post it up there. Worst case scenario, you still have to look within your membership. But yeah, I would just say, knowing the pros and cons of hiring within, that's where I would put a ton of time and energy. Because you are in a very rural area, your members are also probably not as transient as ours are. So the impact of having a good coach in that position or an coach can probably be even more drastic, because we have a good number of members coming in and out at all times, deployment and leaving San Diego and all of that. But you've got one membership base and one town to pull them from. So when they walk in your doors and they become a member, you definitely want to keep them.
Yeah.
Thank
You're
you.
looking for a part-time coaches? You're looking to grow a full-time coach?
We're looking for full-time. I mean, we have multiple positions available. We've probably been talking to Katie about this for a year and a half now. Like, and we've tried lots of posting and like all kinds of things, but we're just in such a rural area and a lot of people really fully involved in their life. But yeah, we're looking to grow a bigger staff.
You got to build an ADU at your house and give them free room.
Right. That's a really big one. It's like,
We have a ton of families, so we're
Mhm.
very lots and lots of families. So a lot of working people, a lot of kids, which shows there's a lot of people who don't spend a lot of time in the gym. They come in, they work out, and they're gone, right?
Yeah. And that's where I would also look at individuals that you wouldn't necessarily see as a coach. Like, do you have somebody who lives at your gym more hours than the typical member? Why are they living there? Is it because they like that environment? Do they? And look at those people as potential coaches, regardless of their athletic talent or like coaching ability. If they want to live at the gym, that's number one to begin with. So
Start to give them some responsibility.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Kapu, I saw your comment. Do you mind, are you able to come off mute and kind of elaborate? I didn't know if you were directing that to Ferdinand and Tracy or if you meant that to Invictus.
Ferdinand and Tracy, like they're like what you can post to Facebook sites and where they're looking for coaches, but if you have a posting, we do have like a really good pool of coaches in the Knowledge Pro. Like majority of them are level 2 or higher, and they're all like actively developing. So we just have like a little channel that we post whenever we hear a gym's looking for coaches. You never know, people willing to travel around if they get the opportunity to be part of a good community and use their skills, continue to develop.
I don't know if I know what that is. Is the Knowledge Pro? Is that like, does
The
everyone know?
Star of their Day. The Star of their Day.
Got it. That's
their
their
little
like,
sub program.
that's their network of coaches only.
Yes.
Right? Got it. Okay, cool.
I
That's
will,
awesome.
thank you very much.
Perfect.
One thing, if you guys, I know a couple of people said, hey, they'd like to do this again, like please send Katie topics that you guys would like to discuss, because we like to talk, so we'll talk about anything. But yeah, if you have other topics, please make sure to reach out to Katie for that.
Absolutely, guys. Let me know. We have things we've entertained. We're kind of like diving deeper into any part of the find, build, retain of coaching, if it felt like it would help, digging in more to some of like the thought process behind Invictus University. We also had talked about topics revolving, and this kind of connects, revolving programming, because Invictus has a unique approach. They touched on it a bit about how they have a dual track program. Well, what does that mean? What does that look like? What are the pros and cons of that, right? There's a heavier lift for the coach in some aspects, but they found it works really well for their culture. Some of you might not realize, but you maybe already do something similar. Maybe you call it something different. They've talked with me a lot about how language plays a big part. So all of these can kind of intertwine, but if any of that is catching anyone, and like, yes, more of this or that, I've already decided we're going to do another call. It's just more about what are we going to zero in on. Would be amazing if we could hit one before the end of the year. I know we only have like a November feels short with the holiday, and then December feels short. So I'm going to chat with you guys soon. We're going to try to come up with the date, but yeah, please guys, send me an email, or if you've got my number, send me a text and let me know what you'd like. And thank you all for being on. I know we ran over time. Thank you, Invictus, Kim, Kirsten, Fritz. Really appreciate you guys and your time, and sharing a little bit about behind the curtain of what makes CrossFit Invictus tick.
Katie.
Yeah, thank you.
You all have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, thanks for attending, guys.
Bye.